Code hoppers, people who've been involved in both rugby union and rugby league. There's always a little bit of debate as to which players have been kind of the most successful, maybe in both sports, which one's made the best switch from one to the other. Interestingly, there was an article from, I forget which paper it was actually, I'll find out, see if I can put it in the description, but Stuart Barnes and Stephen Jones, two current rugby pundits, scribes, were asked to list 10 people who had switched between rugby union and rugby league during their careers to make a top 10. Top 10 lists are always fun. I've put the list on the board. I'll go over some of the players. In all honesty, some of these guys are before my time, and I may have never seen play. And some of them I'm definitely less familiar with than others. I'm mostly familiar with the guys based down here in the Southern Hemisphere and the ones who've been playing more recently in my lifetime. But there we go. You guys can let me know your thoughts as well. And plus, I've probably only seen these guys play in union. I haven't watched a whole lot of league. But there's a lot of guys who appear on both lists. Interestingly, Stuart Barnes' first pick was Brad Thorne. Brad Thorne, current coach of the Queensland Reds. He had a pretty storied career and is always up there among the top people when discussing who's kind of had the biggest impact on both sports. He played for the Crusaders, for Leinster, for the Highlanders, for the All Blacks, for the Broncos in Rugby League, for Queensland in the state of origin, and for Australian Rugby League team. So he's played for both countries in different codes. He won, as far as I'm aware, he won pretty much everything. He won a World Cup. I think he win a Heineken Cup with Leinster. He won Super Rugby. He won State of Origin. He just NRL. He won everything. The guy went places and he's won trophies. So it's, I think on trophy count alone, he'd probably be the number one guy, surely. But interestingly, he doesn't even make Stephen Jones's list, which maybe says a little bit more about Stephen Jones than it does about Brad Thorne, because you can't argue that that guy, even if he's not your number one, he's certainly up there, man. He still looks like he could run out onto the park now, to be fair. So, yeah. Jason Robinson was number 2 for Barnes, and he's on there with number 5 for Stephen Jones. He's one of those guys who I probably mainly only saw playing rugby union for England, especially you think in 2003 Rugby World Cup. The guy was electric. He had a hell of a career. Played for Wigan, played for Great Britain in the league, played for South Sharks, England, other teams as well. But yeah, that guy, he's definitely up there as well. When I'm thinking guys who would be the best in both sports, those two names would certainly be among the top end of mine. But that being said, I never really saw either of them play league. So you guys who are more into your league will have to let me know the league side of things anyway. Third for Barnes, who doesn't appear on Jones's list as well, as Martin Ofaya. I didn't recall the name, embarrassingly. Maybe a bit before my time. Played in the 90s, seemingly mostly for the league side of things. Played for Wigan, played for Great Britain, and then also Bedford Blues and Wasps. So I saw some highlights of him. Winger, seemed to have some lightning pace. Well, I don't have much else to add. If you guys have seen him play, you'll have to let me know what kind of player he was. Likewise, David Watkins, who's the only one who matches up on both lists. He's 4th for each. A Welshman, played in the 60s and 70s, so before I was born, certainly. Have never seen him play. Newport, Wales, Salford, seemed to have a pretty storied career back in the day. It seems like a fair few guys would try their hand at league as well, because obviously professional back in those days, you're able to make some money doing it. Sean Edwards is 5th for Barnes, and he comes in 1st on Stephen Jones's list. That's an interesting one, because I was under the impression he'd only played league, and from what I read on his profile, he only played league, right? But the rugby union side is just his coaching. I only really know him as a coach. That's just in my exposure to him. He's always been defense coach. He's always been like the world-renowned number 1 defense coach. So, yeah, that seems to be the thing. I mean, I guess they didn't necessarily say what impact you had to have on the game, whether it had to be on the actual field yourself, but I don't think anyone would argue that he didn't. From what I saw of his rugby league career with Wigan and Great Britain, he seemed to just be, hundreds of caps. So top guy. And then, like I said, as defence coach, can't argue with it. He's coached Wasps, Wales, and now France as defence coach. So definitely one of the most. When you think defence coach, you probably think of that guy, British and Irish Lions and whatnot. So yeah, Sean Edwards is there. Sonny Bill comes in at number 6 for Barnes, and again doesn't make Stephen Jones's list. I don't get how he can't make the list. I mean, maybe this is a bit of New Zealand bias, but surely he's one of the best guys to ever play both games. He won NRL premierships, he won Rugby World Cup, he won Super Rugby. Again, the guy just won stuff. He was doing boxing at the same time, for goodness sake. So, I mean, love him or loathe him. A lot of people don't like him because he's kind of seen, at least here in New Zealand domestically, as a bit of a glory hog. Like, he came to Rugby Union to play in the Rugby World Cup. He did that and immediately left to go and play league, and then announced that he was going to kind of switch back to rugby just in time for another World Cup. Maybe it was a year or two early, I can't remember, but it was definitely with an eye on the World Cup. And he still managed to squeeze in at last minute one other Rugby League World Cup before he was done, at the cost of somebody else. And again, I don't follow the league news that much, but I remember that was a bit of a thing. So that's one thing he gets criticised for here in New Zealand. But I don't think you can argue with the guy's skill set, even if you don't like him. Bloody good player, man, especially when he was at his peak. Played for the Bulldogs, the Roosters, a New Zealand League team, Toulon, Crusaders, Chiefs, Blues, All Blacks. The guy has been there and done it in both codes, obviously, with Toronto now, right? So, yeah. Number 7, Jonathan Davis. Now, when I hear Jonathan Davis, I think of the current Jonathan Davis, but Jonathan Davis, I'm aware of, again, more as a pundit, to be honest, because I'm not from the UK, and I'm probably not old enough, maybe. From what I could see, his rugby career was mostly in the 80s and 90s, and I hear this guy talked about a lot. I think is he held in about as high regard as you can get in Wales, because anything I see of him, he seems to be really put up on a pedestal. I would imagine he's kind of like, Colin Meads over here in New Zealand kind of thing. So, yeah, he seems to have done a bit of all. He played with Neath, played with Llanelli, with Cardiff, with Wales, also with the Bulldogs in the Rugby League, Warrington, Great Britain. Again, the guy just did a bit of everything. So, yeah. He's on both lists. He's second on Stephen Jones's one. So, there you go. John Muggleton comes in 8th on Barnes's list. He doesn't appear on Jones's one, and that's kind of another one where it's like half playing, half coaching. So the playing stuff was all rugby league in the 80s with Parramatta Eels, and coaching side, defence coach with the Rebels, defence coach with Georgia, defence coach at Gloucester. So maybe not quite at that Sean Edwards level of coaching, but still pretty well renowned for that. Number 9 for Barnes is Israel Folau, and he comes in 3rd on Stephen Jones's list. Now, Folau is in my lifetime. I still remember when I was talking to my Aussie mate, who just happens to be a Waratahs fan, when we were playing fantasy rugby and picking our teams. Before Folau had even played one game of Super Rugby, he said, I fancy this guy Folau to do really well. I think that's when he was leaving AFL, because he did a stint between Union and League in Aussie rules. And sure enough, he was pretty bloody good at Rugby Union. So, yeah, he's maybe not got quite the trophy cabinet of some of the other guys, but in terms of his playing ability, you can't doubt the guy. Although some people have told me they doubted him as a league player. I don't know. Why did the guy leave league? Was it just for money, or was it because other reasons? Played for the Storm, played for the Broncos, played for Queensland State Origin and Australia in the league, played for New South Wales, like I mentioned, and the Wallabies. So he'd be up there on my list as well, because I know I've seen him score at least one highlight-worthy try in State of Origin, doing that kind of big jump that he does. The last one for Barnes was Vainga Tuagamala, known as Inga the Winger when I was a kid. Maybe that's because people weren't that comfortable saying his name. I don't know. I don't know how he feels about that nickname. Inga the winger, Vainga Tuongamala. He played for Auckland back when I was a young fella. Played before the days of Super Rugby. Played for the All Blacks. And I guess took the money to go and play Rugby League again before Rugby Union had gone professional. So played for Wigan, played a ton there. I think he played for Samoa as well. But yeah, certainly one of the bigger names. I remember as a child, just the drain of players going to league to get the money was definitely a thing, and he was one of the bigger guys that people were pretty disappointed to lose. And he's also on this list for Jones there at number 8. The other guys who Jones has, who Barnes doesn't have, Peter Deacon. That was a new name to me. Apparently he was an administrator for the most part. Had a short playing career, ended by injury, and was a Rugby Union and League administrator who died in 2003. But from what I've read about him, which is all new to me, that he was pretty revolutionary in some like the marketing stuff and changed both games. So that's an interesting pick. But honestly, to go administrator over the likes of Sonny Bill Williams and Brad Thorne seems a bit stupid to me, but there you go. You guys will have your own opinions. Phil Larder, number 7 for Jones. Played league and union in the 60s is another new one to me. Was defence coach with England for a while, with Leicester Tigers, and then was a league director of coaching, all in the 90s and the 2000s. And maybe a name that should have been more familiar to me than it was, but again, that was a new one. Lottie Takiri comes in at number 9 on Jones's list. Played for the Broncos, played for the Tigers and Queensland, Australia in league, and then for the Tars and for the Wallabies. I think he was pretty good at both sports from memory. I seem to remember in Rugby 08, Takiri was a pretty bloody good player. So, yeah, but would you rate him above, again, Sonny Bill? I'm thinking no, but you guys let me know what you reckon. And the last one was Alan Tate from Scotland. Again, a new one to me, 80s and 90s. Played for Widnes and for Leeds, then Newcastle Falcons and Scotland, British and Irish Lions. Went on to coach Newcastle Falcons. So, yeah, those are the lists of the experts. For mine, like I mentioned, when I'm thinking top guys who played Union and League, I'm really only thinking players, not administrators personally. I'm thinking Brad Thorne. I'm thinking Sonny Bill. That's probably a bit of New Zealand bias. I'd also have Ezra Folau in there and also Jason Robertson. Those are probably my top 4. But again, these are guys I've seen play. Guys like Jonathan Davis, I just don't know them, man. So that's just me. A few other guys who I kind of thought about when thinking about this, like New Zealanders, Nani Lamape played for the Warriors in Rugby League before he switched to Union, although you wouldn't say he's achieved in Rugby Union what the likes of, I don't know, Sonny Bill has, or even in League as well. So he's just a guy who's played both. Sam Burgess, one of those guys whose career was probably pretty league heavy compared to rugby, made the switch. He had a really interesting interview on House of Rugby a while back about his time in Union and his time in League. But he's just another name that's played both. Chris Ashton's one that I think was pretty successful at both, I would say. He's probably an interesting omission from both these lists. What do you guys reckon? Wendell Saylor's another one. Andy Farrell. John Kerwin, believe it or not, if you can remember, he played for the Warriors for at least a couple of years towards the end of his career. Matthew Ridge went the other way. Was a really promising young guy who was going to be the next big thing in New Zealand rugby and ended up going to League. Another one of the guys who took the money. John Gallagher as well was another one who switched from Union to League after playing with the All Blacks. But yeah, those are just a few of the names of the ones that I could think of. Again, some of them are from my childhood. I'm certainly not as familiar with the guys who did it in the UK or the guys who did it maybe a little bit before my time. But the likes of Tuongamala and Ridge and Gallagher, when those guys left, that was kind of big news. It still stuck with me even to this day. But yeah. You guys let me know your thoughts. The guys I kind of glossed over that I'm not as familiar with, do let us know. And, I mean, I don't know, fill me in some details about the league careers of some of these guys. Like, I mean, I don't really know much about any of their league careers, to be fair. But, yeah, I thought it was an interesting one. Stephen Jones, as I feel like he's just being Stephen Jones with his list, personally. If I had to pick one of these lists, I think I'd be going Barnesy, but you guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.